Hey there, welcome back to Farmcraft. In the last video, I bought this dozer. It's new to me, but it's far from new. And we're getting to work on putting it back in service. So far we've fixed a hack alternator to get it charging again. Fixed some leaking oil with a custom-made wrench. Did some wiring and gave it the old farmer test. And replaced a seal in the governor. Fixed the hour meter and the oil pressure switch. And some other things. And we just ran it and got it up to operating temperature, so we're ready to drain the fluids out of this beast. Get the good stuff. These actually didn't cost that much more than the ones at Napa, so I was there. I had to get some oil that I couldn't get anywhere else, so This is the transmission. Graceful. Now the bevel gear. So I thought those were going to be dry on the sides, but my little manual said to open all three. Yeah. Well, how about this? Bevel gear compartment, remove drain plug. So it's got three arrows there, there, and there. Allow oil to drain. So that's what I was expecting is, oh, okay, it must be kind of divided into three sections inside, and you have to drain from all three. But it turns out some oil due to seepage may be present when the outside drain plugs are removed. So seal seepage, that's a new one. Seal seepage. Anyway, what that tells me is I don't have seal seepage because I didn't have any oil in those outside plugs, and that's just fine. And with the left final drive, I discover something that I really wish I had noticed before buying the machine. Yeah, this thing is leaking oil and really worn down. You can see the bolts are exposed. Well, that is not what you want to see. Sloppy weld and leaking oil. So see this bolt right here? It should look like the rest of these bolts up here, but there's so much steel worn away in this area that this bolt especially is exposed, and this one a little bit too. They took the cover plate off and built up weld on this side, but this is all just worn down. Not real impressed with the repair work that was done on this thing right before they sold it. Probably the same guy who fixed, quote unquote, fixed the alternator, because it does seem to be coming out of the seam. I brake cleaned this thing, and I think that's the source of the leak, from right around this bolt. That could be a good sign, because I have access to that bolt on the other side. So I can take that bolt out, I can put thread sealant on the threads, put it back in, and you know, I could potentially rough this up and epoxy all along there. Maybe I'll get lucky. I would like to not have to tear into that, because I mean, you're talking about taking the track off. And in fact, I think there might be a special puller you need to get the hub off to even get to this that I don't have. It's a pretty big ordeal. So yeah, We'll see if we can farmer fix it. Just going to open it up and one, see the oil, but two, get a feel on how low it is. Might give me an idea how fast this thing's been leaking. Yeah, the oil looks good, looks new, but I can't reach it. So that ain't good. Thing's probably empty. Let's see if I can tell with this wire. Oh, I don't know. It might not be as low as I'm thinking. That got a lot on it pretty quickly. All right, let me get something else. Got a piece of tubing here, and I'm going to dip it down in there. I'm going to plug the hole just like a straw and pull it out. And that ought to tell us. Hey, look at that. Yeah, so the oil's not too bad. Ugh. Man, that thing's on there. Jeez. Well, that's fun. This side is the good side that's not leaking, so I'm just going to put the cap back in and we'll fill it up later when I fill everything else up. Now this side, I actually want to get that bolt out, and I'm just going to let it sit here and drip. And then I'll probably spray some brake cleaner in there and blow it out. I want to get as much of that oil out of there as I can. I'm going to let that drip probably for several hours while I'm doing other stuff. And then we're going to see what we can do about sealing that thing up. All right, now this nut right there, that's the one I need to tighten to get this throttle to have a little more friction and keep itself in position. The throttle won't stay in position when the engine's running. You have to hold it to keep it at full throttle. I'm going to take it off and see if I have a lock nut I can replace it with. I suspect it was tight and it just comes loose. Yeah, it even looks like that used to be a lock nut, but nothing left. All right, it's a 1/2 inch bolt, but it's a fine thread and I don't have one for that. So what I'm going to try is a dab of blue Loctite on that thing. Oh yeah. Yeah, the tighter that is, the more pressure there is on the throttle to stay in position. And that's actually starting to feel pretty good there. All right, 2 things I need to do to this transmission while it's empty. There is a screen behind here that apparently you can clean. So I got to pop that out and pull the screen out. I hope there's enough clearance there. That would be a dumb design if not. And then right here is a breather that is probably fine, but I'm here. Let's clean it. Yeah, thing's pretty caked up with junk. Probably never been done before. It's one of those things, like me, everyone thinks, ah, it's fine. This is brake cleaner. Inside looks good, so that can go back on. And now the screen. One of these days I'm going to get one of those electric ratchets. Doesn't matter how many tools you have, you always need more. Yeah, seals with an O-ring. I got a new O-ring for it. Look at that, comes right out. There's the O-ring. Now I can't get my head in there to see, but I bet you can. Clean rag wiping right down the center wouldn't be a bad thing. Now, if my hand will just bend backwards, that would be excellent. Yeah, look at all that junk. Yeah, there's a lip there that makes it so you can't really wipe it out, but I think I got it pretty good. Yeah, there's junk in there. That needs cleaning. So yeah, I don't know if you can tell, that's just a really fine mesh metal screen. I've been blowing this thing out with air for quite a while. It's not perfect, but I think it's as good as it needs to be. Good enough for who it's for. I mean, it's got a little bit of oil in it. I'll keep working on it. All right, that's it. A couple rounds of brake cleaner in it to try to get some of the oil out so that I could get the particles to unstick. And that looks pretty darn good. Click. This is the crankcase breather, and it's all cracked. Well, I ordered a new crankcase breather, thinking I was going to be getting that whole thing. That's what I got. So I guess that's down inside there. Let's take that off and see how it looks. There's a little rim for that down there. So yeah, that thing's pretty trashed, but you know what does a really good job with stuff like this is Gorilla Tape. And because it's going to be all held together with a pipe clamp, I bet you this will work. This tape is amazingly strong. We used to raise goats, and the stupid goats would stick their heads through the fence and get caught when their horns grew to just the right length to do that. They could push through, but then it would act like a barb, and they couldn't get their head back out. So when I would find one that was sticking its head through the fence, I would wrestle it out of the fence, and then I would take a piece of PVC pipe about that long, and I would Gorilla Tape it to both horns. And it would last long enough that by the time they got that pipe off, their horns would be too long to fit through the fence anymore. So I never had to do the same goat twice because of Gorilla Tape. I mean, in the rain and the snow and out in the field, a goat rubbing on trees and stuff, and it would last. It's pretty impressive stuff. No affiliation. Someone always thinks I'm trying to pawn a product. So, all right. I'm just going to rough up this corner a little bit. Now I want to put this bolt back in. A little bit of brake cleaner. And it's definitely more than I'm going to need, but I'd rather have too much than too little. So I thought I'd show you guys. This is the rear differential of my pickup truck, and that is PC7. There was a casting defect in this thing, and a pinhole leak developed, even though there really wasn't that much rust on it. Basically, my options were get a new differential or try to patch it. So I patched it. It's been several years, and you can see it's dry as a bone. Probably jinxing myself right now, but that stuff does work, and there's a lot of people that swear by JB Weld, and it definitely has its uses, but I think PC7 is a step up. I've tried this before with JB Weld, and it failed, and then tried again with PC7, and it succeeded. Not with this repair, but in the past. So yeah, I'm a PC7 believer. Here's the status of our farmer hack repair. Not quite done with it. I think there's actually a communication with the threads of this bolt and the inside of the gearbox. So I want to take this back off. Yeah, see, that bolt wasn't oily when I put it in. I can see quite a bit of oil right there. All right, I'm going to use some of this Form-A-Gasket aviation sealant. It's kind of like a thread locker and sealant in the same product. All right, I think that's as good as I can get her. So we'll let that set up, and then we're going to fill this thing with gear oil and see if it leaks. So what do you think? Is my farm fix going to work? Let's put the drain plug in. Click. Oh yeah, I see the oil creeping up the threads. This is unfortunate. You see that? That's oil right there. The thing is, though, it's not coming from the seam. I can run my finger along there and it's totally dry. This looks wet up here, but that's the aviation sealant that we used. This is good. So it's actually coming out from the bolt itself. So I'm thinking we take the bolt out and put a copper crush washer there and see if that doesn't fix it. Of course, I don't have the right size copper washer, so I'm just going to make one. I want to anneal it. And then I'm going to drop it on the floor. That's a crappy looking hole. Yeah, it's nice and dry. It's coming out of the bolt right there. The problem is it's just an impossible area to see. And I suspect what's going on is that bolt doesn't have a flat surface to push against. So I don't know if this copper crush washer is going to do it or not. And I don't know how fast that oil is going to leak out of there when I take this bolt out, but I guess we'll find out. That's surprising. Yep, it is slowly seeping out right out of that hole. And the face doesn't look too bad. So let's put the crush washer on. No lock washer, and let's see what it does. That's Guten tight. I'm gonna go have lunch and we'll come back and see if we're still leaking. So it's been sitting here and it's leaking. Man, yeah, I paid too much for this dozer. I want to check something here. It does look like there's a defect that would allow it to leak out around the bolt head. So I've got a rubber washer here because I just want to see if I can make it stop by sealing that surface. That'll tell me a lot. Yeah, if it still leaks with this, then I think I'm dealing with something else. If I can make it stop leaking just by sealing that face, I think I can keep working this problem. The issue is I need a clamp there. I can't just, it's not a fill plug where I could just use an O-ring and just tighten it until it's sealed. I need this to be held together. This is a pretty critical bolt, especially considering the thing's leaking. It's been quite some time, and with the rubber washer there, I've got no leak. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely where it's leaking. Could just leave it how it is. I don't think that's a good idea. I think I ought to put some Permatex in there and gradually tighten down and get that thing torqued and sealed. It's a pain, but if I can get it right, I think that would be the best thing. So we're gonna give that a try. Just sealing it with a rubber washer means that I'm losing clamping force on this connection, and I don't really want that. This is a pretty critical connection, obviously. I want it clamped very well. RTV. Okay, I've got it all around the bolt hole, and I've got it on the bolt. So while I'm here, I put it on the threads too. Maybe I'll torque it like fairly tight, and then I'll come back later and we'll do Guten tight. There, that's fairly tight. And many of you might be wondering why I'm not just taking this thing apart and fixing it right. Well, trust me, it's on my mind, but I'm pretty sure I need even special tools that I don't have just to take that sprocket off. Taking the track off, you have to drive these pins out. I don't have a pin press. I mean, I could get it out with a sledgehammer, but I mean, the amount of work I'm putting in here is nothing compared to the amount of work of taking that whole thing apart and getting this whole thing off and then fixing it. If I can patch this thing and make it work, that will be a successful repair in my book. So it has been an hour, and I'm happy to say no evidence of leaking. A little bit of RTV. I mean, it looks good. If there is a leak there, it's far, far less than it was, and slow enough that I can live with it. But let me go ahead and torque this baby to spec now. Remember, we needed to get it Guten tight. All right, click. That is Guten tight. The idea there is that now the RTV has started to set up, and it's more like a rubber that's getting compressed as you torque it all the way down. Hopefully, that will be it. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, John, you're an idiot. That steel wore off of there from rocks and dirt just rubbing on it over and over as it's in use. How long do you think that epoxy is going to hold up? Yeah, that's a fair point. I have a plan for that. Yep, using CAD again. Cardboard assisted design. Yeah, I really wish I had some abrasion resistant like 3/8. This 1/2 inch is a bit much. Oh. Saw that coming. That'll get your attention. I'm wearing one of these. This thing sat overnight and nothing. How about that? A little shiny looking from that aviation sealant we used earlier, but there is no oil dripping. So now all we need to do is get this piece of plate welded on here like that. And I think that'll probably last for quite a while. Hopefully, maybe. What do you think? So my thinking here is, obviously I don't want to weld across the seam, and when I do weld I want to easily be cuttable with a grinder so that I can take this thing apart. I do not want to go buzzing all the way down both sides. You know, this is just here as a sacrificial part. So as long as it'll stay there, I think it's pretty well locked in. I don't know, I guess time will tell, or maybe the audience will tell me I'm an idiot. It's entirely possible. So the second one was actually easier. All right, now we're getting somewhere. My final drives don't leak, and they're both protected, at least for now. I don't know if that's going to hold or not. All right, this exhaust. So I need to... I've got a couple little holes that I'm going to weld shut. That better. So working on the fuel filters now, and right there is a handle. I just closed that. That's the fuel cutoff valve coming out of the bottom of the fuel tank. So now we come over here. This is the primer pump right there. Behind that there is a screen of some kind that we can clean. That's the primary filter. and then it goes from there to here, the secondary filter, and then that comes over to the fuel pump. So I don't know if this thing used to be a hex head. Not sure what that is, but it looks like someone's used a chisel on it before. And we're going to try to do it again. Whew. So spring and a copper washer is all that's on that. Ugh. Now the manual says there's a screen in there. I'm kind of having my doubts. There was probably a screen here and it's long gone. So I may have to check, see if it's worth putting that back in. It probably isn't. With the one filter that it's got, especially you run a good filter on it, it'll be fine. There it is. All right, all you mechanics out there, go over, sit in the corner, don't look, hug your knees, and just think happy thoughts. But I got to get this ridiculously rounded nut tightened up. And this is the best tool I have for it. Okay, you can look now. Am I tightening it? I'm tightening it. It's going to get loose if you go the wrong way. Generally. There we go. Comes out of this filter. I think it needed to be changed. I still don't have engine oil in it and can't start it. I think it'll probably start like it is, but if it doesn't, I need to remind myself to crack the fuel lines and bleed them all the way to the cylinders. So here's that diesel fuel that came out of the fuel filter, and I'm not so cheap that I really want to save it, but what do you do with that stuff? I don't know, it's annoying to get rid of it. And taking it to a recycling place is far from convenient for me, so I'm basically going to take as much of that off as I can and put it back in the tank. I think that'll do it. Alright, I'm going to run some fuel injector cleaner through this thing. Measured how much fuel's in the tank. So I'm just adding the appropriate amount. I need to run this stuff through my dump truck too. So here's the battery compartment up under the seat. It's easy access when you have the back panel off. It doesn't have any tie downs, and I can definitely foresee different size batteries going in here in the future. So what I want to do is make something that's easy, that's going to allow this battery to be fixed in position. I can't have it bouncing around and chafing the cables and everything while I'm operating this thing. So that is going to go around the battery and keep it from being able to move around. But I don't want it, because there's metal underneath it, I don't want it trapping water. So I'm going to drive a bunch of these screws in it. These are left over from doing the metal roof on my little addition out there. And they'll just act as little feet that'll hold this thing up like a 1/4 inch. It's not as bad as you're thinking. Stick with me. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to do a little work on these tanks. So there's lots of areas that are rusty on the machine, but these are actually pitted very deeply, and underneath this is the hydraulic oil, underneath that is the fuel tank, and the last thing I need is it rusting all the way through, and then I've got water getting into my tanks. So we're not going to let that happen. Y'all ever used this stuff before? I never have. I've heard enough about it though that I'm a believer even before I see it. So many people singing its praises. Stuff really works. Paint over rust. So yeah, that thing can't slide around anymore. And maybe I'll put a bungee cord or something over it, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with that actually. This cable is just sitting here and there's no grommet or anything on that piece of metal. Now that the battery can't move around, it's definitely better, but I'm gonna put a piece of wire loom over it. Just give it a little extra protection. So one of my plates is loose here, and I actually still have enough hex on the bolts. I think I can use them. The issue is underneath it's a square and there's not really room to get a wrench on, but I think it'll be easy enough just to shove something in there so that it can't spin. If I just shove that like that. Actually found a railroad spike is a really good thing to reach through to get the far ones. And of course the last ones being the most stubborn. Got it. So most of the bolt threads look pretty good, but this one is pretty buggered up. That's the one I had to heat. So yeah, let me see if I can chase those threads. All right, I cleaned everything off with some brake cleaner. That's not going anywhere. That was one of the rattles that you could constantly hear when the machine was in operation. Another one is this. This thing could use some work. I wish it would seal better anyway. See, it doesn't really close so that water could get down in the exhaust when it's not being used. That's no bueno. And let's see if we can make it close properly first. You can see it's bent here. There's a lot of play and the bolt could probably be bigger. And the other thing I'm seeing, I think it's bent here. So I need to twist it back. That's looking better. Now if I get the right bolt on there so that this thing doesn't have all this play in it. Yeah, that took a lot of the play out of it. I don't think it'll get hot enough out here to melt thread locker. I'm just going to put a little dab there. I wish that bolt was a little longer, but that's all I had. And right here is the engine oil fill spout. Using the same stuff I use in my truck and in my tractor. That is right at the full mark, but I have not filled that filter yet. And it said it was going to be 3 gallons. I stopped a little shy just to be sure. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it off, put all 3 gallons in. Once it runs and fills that filter, it'll be right on. Close enough for who it's for. All right, we're here under the seat. This is the transmission. This is the bevel gear. This guy gets 4.5 gallons. That has to be checked with the engine running. I guess I ought to go ahead and start the engine. I can check that and the transmission and make sure both of them are correct. We're about to see if I need to bleed the fuel system or not. I got some smoke. Let's give it the glow plugs that it likes so much. You see that thing start moving even though I had the safety on? I need to do some adjusting of when it engages the gear. Okay, now the bevel gear. Ugh. Yeah, I need to clean these breathers out. Bevel gear gets 4 gallons, same oil. SAE 30 TO4. Alright, this one also gets checked with the engine running, but first I'm going to go check the engine oil. First time I've run it since changing it, make sure it's right. Okay, engine oil was right on the money. All right, take these breather caps and I think I'm just going to fill them up with gasoline and then blow them out. This one especially, this was the bevel gear. It's a mess. Look how nasty that got. It's not exactly cat yellow. It's actually quite close to the original color. This is pretty faded. And I had it on hand, so I'm gonna use it. I think that'll work. Not doing it for beauty, more for protection. So rather than letting these holes just constantly be full of water and gunk, I'm going to put some bolts with RTV in them. And RTV is silicone gasket maker. I forget what the RTV stands for. Go. This is the drain valve of the fuel tank. It's the lowest point. I've got a container underneath that. I want to crack that open and make sure no water or other junk comes out. I was thinking if you loosen this nut, it would start to drain out of the bottom here. But it turns out the handle is broken off. You're supposed to turn the shaft. All right, I have messed with that for quite a while, and that valve is broken. The whole thing wants to unscrew rather than open and close. So I need to take it off of there to fix it. This is one of those things that, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it is broke, but do you fix it? I could potentially, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I'd have to buy a new valve. But all the fuel in the tank's gonna come out. I am ready here with a funnel. I want to try to catch the first bit in this container to see if there's water or anything. But then I can put it back into cans. Hopefully though, I'm not gonna make a big mess. Or I'm gonna make somewhat of a mess, but hopefully it won't be too big. You can probably tell I've decided I want to fix it. Water does get into diesel tanks, even just through condensation, not necessarily leakage. And the fact that this is broken, this tank has probably not been drained in who knows how long. Water at the bottom of the tank can rust out the tank. It could also contribute to hard starting. So yeah, let's open that thing up. This is not leaking already. Well, that thing is plugged up good, which isn't a horrible thing. I'll let it sit there and leak. I'll catch the very bottom stuff, which from the looks of it, I think is fuel. Then I'm gonna reach up in there and open that up. Am I gonna regret this? Probably. Change into another container. So just finishing up draining there. A little bit of a mess, but not too bad. I'm gonna leave that thing sitting there dripping while I look at this valve. Wonder why it wasn't working. That's the part that went into the tank. And I also found this. This was the knob that was supposed to go on that and allow you to turn it. And let's go clean that up and see what's going on. Man, that thing is frozen up in there good. Little blaster. probably going to need a new valve, but let's see if we can break it free. Hey. Pretty sure there's supposed to be an O-ring or something there. Yeah, the O-ring actually doesn't feel too bad. Yeah, it might be salvageable. Buggered it up a little bit getting it loose, and this has a washer in it that needs to go over that. So I'll just smooth that out on the sander. I actually think this is going to work. So what I'm thinking is I just sand a couple flats so that I can get a wrench on that to open it next time. 3/16 wrench will work. There's a hollow area there that's not going to do me any good, so I need to take that off. Just might work. I think that might do it. So I stuck a rag down there and wiped it around a little bit. There's not that much in there. It's just kind of what you would expect. It's a mild steel tank. It's 50 years old. The inside's rusty. Yeah, I'm okay with this. It's got a fuel filter. That's what it's for. Tell you what I don't see is any leaking. Sweet. Alright, another thing I need to do before I put this baby back in action is adjust the steering clutches. So according to this, you're supposed to have 5 to 6 inches of pedal free travel. And if it's not, it gives you this procedure to do. That's all the free travel I have, which amounts to about 3.5 inches. Actually, this one might not be quite as bad. Yeah, that one's more like 4.25. Okay. So the first step is going to be to take this cover plate off right there. And then you're supposed to tighten this bolt all the way. I think that's tight. Now we're under the machine, and this is an adjustment screw with a jam nut. So I'm going to mark it so I can keep track of how many turns I'm doing, and then I'm loosening the jam nut, but the adjustment screw goes with it. I need to break them free from each other. Turn from where I was. Oh yeah, it's moving. Okay. So I need to turn this in until it touches the brake drum. Just touching the brake drum, what does that mean? I think right there. That's just touching. Okay, so turn 1/2 out. So 1/2, 1, 1.5, right there. So now I'm supposed to let that out 3.5 turns. Should be it. That put me a little better. I'm at 4. I'm still not at 5, but the manual actually said turn it out approximately 3.5 turns. So I'm thinking, let me go another turn, and we will see what happens to my free travel. Yeah, that definitely added. That's like 4.5 now. What does that mean? Does that indicate the state of my steering clutches? Like, are they worn that I'm having to adjust more? or what? I'm gonna go ahead and get it to 5 inches, and yeah, then we'll test the thing out and see how it drives. So we'll see how that does. All right, guys, we've done a lot of work on this thing. Believe it or not, I still have more ideas on things that I could go through, but I think I've done enough to get going on it. Thought about maybe adjusting the valves to see if that would help with the starting, but my theory is 2 things. One is I'm not sure that the single battery is giving it enough voltage to turn it over fast enough to start like it should. I did notice when I was cranking, the battery voltage dropped all the way down to 8 volts. It's a good battery, so you know it's probably just made to have more than one battery. The other thing is the injectors might not be atomizing the fuel very well, just making it hard to get that initial pop going, which that would really fit with needing the glow plugs. I'm hoping that injector cleaner that I put in is going to help with that. Let's take it out for a quick ride. We'll see if the steering clutches work. Let's see if it'll start. No glow plugs. That was the first time. I don't think that temperature gauge works. And I know the water temperature gauge doesn't work. Darn it. There's always something. On the next video, we are going to tackle these hydraulic cylinders, replace the rod on that one, and get those repacked, change the hydraulic oil and filter. And then we're going to be ready to put this thing into action, I think. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.